You know that feeling when you check your bank app and it hits you like a punch? Not because you bought something crazy, not because you took a luxury trip, but because you did what millions of people do now. You swiped, you tapped pay later, you carried a balance just to keep life moving. And the worst part is the thought you can't shake. This is my story, isn't it? It's 2026. The headlines say the rate hikes are over. The charts look calmer than they used to. But real life doesn't feel calm. Mortgage rates still feel heavy. Credit cards still feel brutal. Rent still shows up like a deadline that never negotiates. And your phone is a 247 storefront that sells you comfort on credit. So you wonder, if rates aren't rising every month anymore, why does everything still feel harder? Now imagine a man in a powdered wig sitting across from you at a diner booth. He watches you scroll. He watches you flinch at the minimum payment. He watches you whisper, "I'm not irresponsible. I'm just tired." He doesn't judge you. He says calmly, "When money is lent at interest, it is treated as capital by the lender. But what you do with it decides whether it becomes your capital or your cage." That man is Adam Smith. And in Book 2, Chapter 4 of The Wealth of Nations, Smith draws a line so sharp it could cut through the fog of modern finance. Borrowed money has two destinies. In the first destiny, you use the loan as capital. You use it to employ productive effort work that creates new value. It might be tools, training, inventory, a machine, a system, a process, something that makes output bigger than input. In that world, interest is not a curse, it's a cost. Because the debt pays for itself. It creates surplus. It throws off profit. And from that profit, you repay both principal and interest, without cannibalizing your life. In the second destiny, you use the loan for immediate consumption. Not always luxury. Often it's far more common than that. It's maintaining your lifestyle. It's smoothing the month. It's buying relief. It's paying for normal life that quietly became too expensive. Smith calls this the path of the prodigal, not as a moral insult, but as a diagnosis, because repayment doesn't come from profit. It comes from selling pieces of your future. More hours, more stress, less stability, less peace. Now give this moment a face. Meet Jason. He's 34, not broke, not rich, just stretched. His paycheck lands on Friday, and by Monday, it already has a job. Rent, insurance, groceries, the small subscriptions that somehow add up, minimum payments that keep growing teeth. Jason tells himself he's fine. Everyone's doing it. The card is just a bridge to next month. But the bridge keeps getting longer. One night, Jason buys a jacket he doesn't need because the algorithm found him at the exact second his brain wanted a win. He doesn't even feel excited when he clicks place order. He feels relieved. For about 8 minutes. Then the anxiety returns, heavier. And now it has a tracking number. Jason stares into his coffee and realizes he's been using debt like emotional first aid. So Smith offers him a different framework. Not motivational, practical. Smith says, let's get precise. Most people misunderstand what a loan is. He explains that loans are made in money. Yes, but what borrowers really want is not the money itself. They want what money can buy: goods, labor, resources, time. Money is just the transfer slip, the receipt paper. What is really happening is this. When you borrow, you pull real resources from the future into the present. You're claiming tomorrow's production today. That's why interest feels like pressure. It is pressure. Interest is not free income. It is a claim on future labor. Then Smith says something that feels like it was written for 2026. Most people don't borrow because they're thrilled to spend. They borrow because the spending already happened. The loan is often not the beginning of the story. It's the cleanup crew arriving late. You ran up a tab with life. Prices went up, emergencies hit, the month got tight. The car needed repair, the rent jumped, the credit card balance rolled. And then the loan arrives politely, with paperwork and interest, to make yesterday's reality look organized. Jason feels exposed because that's exactly his pattern. He thought borrowing meant choosing to spend. Smith shows him that borrowing is often the consequence of yesterday's decisions. Yesterday's inflation, yesterday's emergencies. So Smith doesn't preach never borrow. He hands Jason one brutal question. Will this loan create new value or only delay pain? Because in Smith's world, capital replaces labor. Consumption delays it. If your debt creates cash flow, it can reduce your future labor. If your debt buys comfort, it multiplies your future labor. Same interest. Two very different futures, Jason asks. So what am I supposed to do? Never buy anything enjoyable? Smith smiles like he's heard this excuse for 250 years. He says, if you must borrow, borrow only for something that can repay you. In modern language, convert debt from a painkiller into a tool. Jason writes a rule on a piece of paper. Every dollar of debt must point to a cash flow path. He draws a line down the page. On the left, consumption debt. On the right, capital debt. Consumption debt is anything that disappears the moment you buy it, especially if it was bought to soothe stress. Capital debt is anything that increases earning power, reduces required expenses, or creates an asset that pays you back. Jason realizes his most expensive subscription isn't streaming. It's interest. So he makes 3 moves that look boring but feel like freedom. First, he builds a runway. Not a giant emergency fund. Just enough cash to stop panic borrowing. Because panic is how you become the prodigal without even noticing. Second, he reduces the debt that charges him the most for the least value. He doesn't do it because he's disciplined. He does it because he finally sees what interest is rent, paid to someone else for control over his future production. Third, he creates one capital investment that is small, specific and measurable, a certification that leads to a pay bump, a tool that saves him hours each week, a side project with a clear path to revenue, nothing glamorous, just real. And here's the twist: Smith would tell you this isn't just personal finance, it's economics. Because when rates are high, or even just high for long enough, fantasy dies quickly. Only real productivity survives. If your plan collapses the moment money becomes expensive, it was never a plan. It was hope with a payment schedule. Jason's life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes directed. He stops buying relief. He starts buying leverage. And that's Smith's warning and his gift to you in 2026. The lender thinks your loan is capital. Your future depends on whether you treat it the same way.